Didn't have breakfast, hoping for lunch.
Second.
All in favor?
You are live.
Thank you. Good morning. This is the Government Operations Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. This is our second work session of the year. Today, we are going to take up the following bills: HB 77, HB 138, HB 181, HB 196, HB 276. If you are here for HB 106, the bill sponsor has requested some additional time to resolve some outstanding issues and requests for information, so that bill will not be considered today. And today we have with us Lindsay Rowe, Committee Counsel, who is the analyst for all of these bills, and she'll be assisting us as we move through the agenda. We see that Delegate Boucher is with us. House Bill 77, Commission to Study African American Civil War Soldiers in Maryland. Lindsay, can you remind us what it does, please?
So you actually just said the Commission to Study Civil War Soldiers, which is a bill from last year, same sponsor.
Yes, it is.
This is Commission to Study African American Civil War Sailors in Maryland. The commission must study the history of African American Civil War sailors who fought for the Union Navy in Maryland, including muster rolls, locations of services, and all distinguished honors and recognitions awarded, and make findings and recommendations regarding the funding, design, construction, and location of an appropriate memorial dedicated to the African American Civil War sailors in Maryland. They must report their findings and recommendations to the Governor and General Assembly by December 1st, 2025. There is a cross file that isn't being heard until tomorrow over in EEE, and there is a low fiscal note that is below the threshold just for fiscal year 2026. And I'll remind everyone that the bill just referenced the Commission to Study African American Civil War Soldiers in Maryland, which was Chapter 434 of 2024, had a unanimous vote in the House and the Senate last year. There's no amendments.
Move favorable.
Okay.
Second.
A motion to move favorable.
Question.
Okay, we have a motion. And Delegate Hill, what's your question?
Yes, a question to the sponsor. I had just asked during the hearing, there's no representation from any of the various veterans or African American veterans or military groups, and there's no amendment. So I'm from the Nothing About Us Without Us, and I didn't know whether he'd made any efforts to see and to or amend the bill so that somebody representing those groups will be on the commission.
Delegate Boucher?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Hill, for bringing it up. I have it on crossfile, and I'm very apprehensive about trying to do anything to this one while the other one's going through. They didn't even hear our bill from the House last year in the Senate, so I think primarily this might go through again on Muse's bill. And considering he's an African-American veteran, I think it'd be best if he handled any amendments on that side. I really don't want to jeopardize this bill in any way. So it went through last year as is. And I'm trying to be very conservative and moderate how I approach this. But we had lots of people involved last year from different communities. We solicited the Black Caucus. So the opportunity is out there for everyone to participate. I just don't want to jeopardize anything happening with this bill that could make it fail.
Thank you.
Delegate Lopez?
This is the second day in a row that one of my brilliant and bright colleagues has asked the same question that I was going to ask. So thank you, Delegate Hill, and thank you, Chair Kerr, for the opportunity. I would say just anecdotally, logistically, it does make things a little bit more complicated to have an amendment, but I don't think this is one of those amendments that would kill the bill or put it in jeopardy. I think it really does strengthen the content that you're putting forward and makes the quality of the bill more inclusive, and that's something that we should always be striving to do here.
Thank you, Delegate Lopez. Delegate Kaiser?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I'm not sure why we are in January worried about amendments between the two chambers. This is what we do. So I think we should consider what Delegate Hill was suggesting to add some groups, and we can, in the meantime, talk to the senator's office and so forth. So I don't think any time is lost.
Delegate Hill, back to you. Do you have an amendment proposal?
Well, I mean, I would like to move that the subcommittee add an amendment to add representation from the African American veterans community, and that the specific organization that we hold and ask the, for I don't know whether it will be council or the sponsor to get specific suggestions and consultation with the senator and come back so we can fill that in. And the sooner we get that, so it's a amendment in concept that I would be offering with the specifics to be worked out. So
Is that something you'd like to do today, or are you suggesting that we take this bill up again next week?
you're, as you see fit, Mr. Chair. We can adopt it in concept if the folks want to vote on that. If not, we can hold it till next week.
Okay, Delegate Kaiser.
I would suggest, Delegate Hill, that you offer it in concept, and that it, add just 1 or 2 or 3 groups, no more. We never like commissions to be too loaded, because then they can't do their work. So we're able to vote for it as a full committee on Friday.
Okay, then I would
keep it moving.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion.
Okay, and Delegate Boucher, I think you, as the subcommittee members have indicated, this should not be cause for concern, that what we're doing here is actually strengthening your bill and giving it a better chance of getting through the full committee in the House.
I am sincerely grateful. I am the rookie legislator, and you guys are the veterans. You know best on this. And I welcome the amendment to make it stronger. I sincerely appreciate Delegate Hill for bringing this point up. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Hill, can you work with Lindsay on the amendment language?
If it's all right with the subcommittee, I think it would be reasonable. We have 6 members now being appointed by the governor, so we could add 1 member from the veteran community who is African American.
I think there are actually organizations, so I will be
You
happy
want
to work
specific
with you, Lindsay, to look for
Well,
that.
representing a veterans organization? Or do you want a veterans
African
organization
American.
that
I think she
specifically
means
serves-
particular African American veterans organizations.
Correct.
Well, we could say a representative from an African American veterans organization.
Right. So can you reread for us who the other members are now? Because
We
that
have-
one representation is a little slim.
We have 1 representative from the State Archives, 1 from Department of Planning, 1 representative from the Governor's Commission on Maryland Military Monuments, 1 representative from the Commission on African American History and Culture, 1 representative from Preservation Maryland Incorporated, and 1 representative from the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area Incorporated.
So I'm fine with language from an African American veterans organization. And normally we also put in somebody from the NAACP, but I don't feel that we necessarily need to have an additional member, but I'm open to that conversation from the other members.
Thanks. I'll come back to you in just a second. Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask, Delegate Hill offered the motion. Have we seconded it?
Okay, that's
Yes,
what I was
I
going to
did.
come back to Delegate Hill to address her motion, and I see that you are ready to second it. So we have an amendment on the floor here. We have a motion and a second to adopt the conceptual amendment. All in favor of the
So it's no
amendment?
longer conceptual because Lindsay's given specific language.
Thanks for that
So
clarification.
maybe she can read it for us.
Okay, Lindsay, if you have something to read for us.
1 representative from an African American veterans organization, and that's appointed by the governor. And also, just to clarify, these are members appointed by the governor. There's also a member of the Senate and a member of the House of Delegates on the commission.
Delegate Hill, satisfied with the amendment?
You guys are all.
Yeah.
Okay. Delegate Johnson, is your second still in effect?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposition to the amendment? The amendment's been adopted. On the bill is amended.
Move the
Delegate
bill.
Szeliga.
Second.
Delegate Szeliga.
Thank you. The so I'm reading the fiscal note. This bill is going to set up a whole new commission.
Yes.
It's,
Why can't we move this? I mean, it's important, but why don't we add it to another commission? Why don't we just task another commission with this? And I am concerned about the fiscal note that says, 66,000, and then it says plus, it will probably be higher because, frankly, the state should be paying the health insurance costs for that person. So why couldn't the sponsor find a place to put this in the bill that he passed last year and then just expand their studies to include that?
The,
Delegate Boucher, is this an ad hoc
I had
commission?
met with the
This
state
position would go away
archives
after one year?
and thank you, Chairman. I had met with the state archives last year formulating the first bill, and it was in their discretion, their plan of attack to do this, to bite it off in two smaller chunks. But the last meeting I had with them last month, their ultimate objective after this second study is to come back and try to pull it all together. So they're trying to keep it separate from other committees or commissions that are going on. And they want to specifically focus on the African American soldiers of the Civil War, separate from other commissions and studies, and then bring it all together in a much larger, comprehensive package that ultimately will lead to not only the monuments, but more important, the educational curriculum is their primary goal and my primary goal as well. So it's tended to be separate from other issues, and I specifically wanted to have it that way. So the path I took was based upon the administration's advice, if that is helpful, Delegate.
Well, it sounds like the administration wants another staffer. I am very concerned that we're setting up yet another commission. And it should be in a commission that already exists. The commission you set up last year, Delegate Boucher, is that operating?
No, ma'am. It was just temporary, specifically. They were trying to save the cost instead of an ongoing commission. That's why it's two separate commissions. They're just temporary, and it was a cost-effective measure. So I understand what they're doing. I'm trying to cooperate with them and their fiscal concerns as well. So that's basically, I think, why they did it this way.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to support this. I don't think we need another commission. I think this is important. But now we're hearing that they'll come back next year with another commission and then another commission. I mean, this is important. Why won't the commission you created last year just take this on as an added task?
Well, the point is they need someone in the staff to coordinate it and pull it all together. The subsequent funding that would be needed would not be for a commission. What their objective is ultimately have a staff member that can coordinate and pull together not only information from this study, but also all the vast amount of historical information that we have as a state that they're in control of that is truly untapped for our educational system. And as a member of the judiciary, this and a former juvenile offender, which I try to divulge everyone, I think it's extremely important from a sociological standpoint that the history of African Americans in Maryland is brought forth to our youth because it is going to have a tremendous long-term impact upon juvenile crime. Sociological studies have showed that one of the key factors that's causing our juvenile crime to go up is the lack of historical grounding of our youth and understanding what took place before us. History plays a very vital role in that, and the state archives is amassing and has access to so much information that eventually they'd like to bring into the educational system, and this is part of it. So in the future, what they potentially want is someone who has an educational research capacity that would have the ability to do stuff for the educational system above and beyond just this specific issue. I hope that's helpful.
Sure. I mean, we all value education and of course want to ensure that African American students know their history. But I clicked on the commission that you created last year, laudable Civil War soldiers in Maryland. I'm just not convinced today when we have a $3 billion budget deficit that we should be creating additional commissions. And if this is important, then this should be done with existing resources, find a place to put it where people are intently studying these issues. And so I'm not going to be able to support it. Now, it's not because don't take it personal, Delegate Boucher. I think it's a good idea. I just think, there are times when we have to decide between wants and needs. And there's so many pressing educational issues today that our kids have. I'd really like them to be proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Thank you.
Thanks, Delegate Shalega. Delegate Alston?
Thank you. I will say this is a good example of why we should make the best bill at the time we're making it. Because last year we had the opportunity to add this, and we should have, and we didn't. And now we're here this year trying to do it with a budget deficit. I do think it's an important issue. I do support the bill and the concept. I think we probably should talk to the state archives. Is anyone from the archives on today?
No.
I would really like to see this bill have the unanimous support that we had last year. And in light of Delegate Shalega's concerns, I would like us to hold this bill so we could talk to the archives and see if they can incorporate this request into last year's commission, which was my question when we did this last year. They expressed concerns about the level and magnitude of the research because of the sailors being on ships and the manifest not being maintained, that they thought it was going to require more work. But I would like an opportunity to speak to them to see if they can incorporate it into that, because I think it's important that a bill like this have unanimous bipartisan support. So if we could hold this so we can have that conversation, would you be okay with that? Delegate Shalega, if we were able to get that information, would that change your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Okay.
it's a laudable task and project. And I think we should find a way to do it with existing resources and add it to something else we're doing, not create a very narrow yet another commission. And then ask all the folks on the commission to commit yet another year to service when there's so many important things that we have to be focused on. So thank you, Delegate Alston. Yes, I'd be fine with that.
Thank you.
Let me go to Lindsay.
I just wanted to provide some context on last year's commission. So the commission last year ostensibly has finished their work. They reported in December of 2024. The termination date from last year's bill is not until June 30th, 2025. The idea behind that being if the commission was not able to finish their work, it could be extended. Before Delegate Hill's amendment, the list of commission members was the same group, the same entities represented. I can't speak to whether or not the actual same individuals would have been on this commission as well. So hypothetically, you could get that same group together again to explore this issue. But I will say that probably the conversation you want to have is with state archives as to whether or not they need contractual support staff to do the actual writing up of the report. Because it's not so much the reimbursement for travel expenses for the commission members who are otherwise volunteers. It's the staff support from state archives for the commission. So whether or not they could figure out a way to do it with existing resources rather than have to contractually get somebody in to help them to actually complete the work of the additional, like the research and writing up the component of this report. So even if you were to extend last year's bill as opposed to doing this one, it would involve some sort of support from state archives. And I think that's the cost concern here.
Delegate Alston, I'll come back to your hold request in just a second. Delegate Kaiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Shalega and Delegate Alston. With all due respect, Delegate Boucher, Delegate Shalega asked you a question and you never really answered it. She asked why it needed to be a new commission, and instead you answered why we needed to do the issue in general. And so I appreciate Delegate Shalega's question, and hopefully with Delegate Alston's recommendation for a hold and talking to the archives, we can understand that, because she specifically asked why should it be a new commission, and you just said why it was important. So I'm glad we're taking this pause to take that look at it. So thank you.
Delegate Hill?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of points. Number one, from what Lindsay said, one option, Delegate Boucher, would be to extend the current commission for some additional months because that money's already been allocated up to June for that staffing. That may bring down the fiscal note. The second thing that I noted is that in the fiscal note, what it reads is that it says because of given the limited time frame for the commission to produce its report and the intricacy of the duties, they think they need this additional staffing. So if you were to push the reporting date out, it might be that would change the fiscal note and bring it down. And the third thing to consider is I can go online at, www.history.navy.military and see a great deal about African-American participation in U.S. Navy during the Civil War. So I do think the additional week to do a little bit more work to try and bring the fiscal note down, to look at resources that are there and to see whether it makes more sense to extend the duties of the commission already assigned and give an additional member, as our amendment does, would in any way impact that. And you can always go back to the fiscal note writers and ask them if those changes are made, how does that revise their numbers?
Okay, Delegate Szeliga, final thought before we deal with the request to hold.
Thank you so much. Another suggestion I have is to just send a letter, Delegate Boucher. If that commission is still in place for another 6 months, you could send a letter. We wouldn't need a bill. We could save the money and time and trouble of a bill. I've gotten plenty done without a bill. And just ask the commission you set up last year to, as they're slated to work for another 6 months, to include this information in what they already have and not have a whole new commission. And then it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Szeliga. So, Delegate Alston, you've requested a hold. So I will honor that request and we will hold this bill till next year, next week.
Next week, okay.
I hope next week. Okay, Delegate Boucher, thank you for your patience, and we'll speak with you next week and see what you can come back with us in terms of the questions that came up today.
But thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate the committee putting so much thought into this. I sincerely appreciate it because ultimately we all have the same objective, but we have fiscal concerns. So I appreciate everyone's time and effort today and look forward to the next committee meeting. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 138, which is a departmental bill from the Department of Veterans and Military Families. Lindsay, can you remind us about this one, please?
As introduced, the departmental bill repeals the state residency requirement in order for specified veterans to be buried in a state veterans cemetery. The bill also alters the definition of veteran and expands those eligible for burial in a state veterans cemetery. If the individual being buried is a member of the National Guard or the military reserves, or the individual's eligible dependent, the Department of Veterans and Military Families must collect at the time of burial a fee equal to the annual plot allowance established by the National Cemetery Administration. I circulated 2 amendments on this. I circulated one yesterday and then I updated it this morning based on some feedback from the department and from the Maryland Military Coalition to expand eligibility for burial in a state veteran cemetery to include not just members of the National Guard and the military reserves, which refers to the military forces, but also to the reserve component of the Public Health Service. Unfortunately, I don't see anyone from either of those 2 organizations here now to speak to that. So I haven't heard back from them since sending the update to them this morning saying, is this what you were hoping for? Hopefully it does capture what they were looking for.
So we're looking at the 12925 amendment.
Yes, 8:25 a.m.
And
timestamp.
that was after they had seen the one from the
So
previous.
they'd seen the previous one from yesterday, and their feedback was specifically to use this definition of reserve component. So that's a new definition added for it includes the Army National Guard, the Army Reserve, Navy Reserve, Marine Corps Reserve, the Air National Guard, Air Force Reserve, Coast Guard Reserve, or the Reserve Corps of the U.S. Public Health Service. And that's based on a federal law. The outstanding question that I had on this is I noted that this does not include any reserve component of the Space Force. I don't know if there is a reserve component of the Space Force, but they are not listed there. And again, this is based on federal statutes, so it wasn't listed there either.
And there was no opposition and there's no fiscal impact.
Right.
Delegate Schlega, is that a legacy hand? Okay, Delegate
Yes,
Kaiser.
it's a legacy hand. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for council. When I look at the bill on page 2 near the bottom, I just want to understand that as per the purpose paragraph saying the residency change, that's just the change of saying what, not just when the veteran, but now it's when the member entered or died. That is that essentially technical in some ways, that residency change?
I'm sorry, can you point to like the line number that you're looking at with your question?
Sure. On page 2, lines 25 through 28.
If the veteran is, so they're referring to if the veteran is a member of in my amended version of a reserve component.
Say
So
again?
these
But,
reserve.
but
then
we're changing the word from veteran to member,
This is
and
a
I was just
priority.
trying to
So
understand
somebody
that
needs to
part.
go to that meeting. Okay, thank you.
In lines 27 and
Can
28.
someone go?
Delegate,
you.
you're not muted.
Delegate Hill?
Yes, I think that's getting at the notion of someone being a member of the reserves.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
That's right. So they could be a current member. They don't have to be a veteran in order for this to apply. Delegate Hill.
Yeah, thanks. I had a note from the hearing. And maybe someone can answer. I wrote, I'm not clear why we expect a minimal fiscal impact. If the feds aren't covering the full cost for vets and their beneficiaries, does the state have to pick it up? And apparently we can apply for federal grants. That was the answer that we were given. But there was an issue with the National Veteran Cemetery capacity. So these people would be interred at the state cemetery. So I didn't know, maybe Lindsay, you have a thought about that. That's just the question I had, and maybe it got answered, but I just was confused about how there could be, they both said minimal impact and they said that they couldn't calculate it because it depends on how many people they're burying and how many people are dead.
So as I understood from their testimony, it was that the expansion of eligibility for veterans would be reimbursed by the federal government, and to the extent that the members of the reserves or the individuals' dependents are the ones being buried, that then they would be collecting a fee. So
Okay.
it's covered somewhere.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. I'm good. All right. I move the bill. But we have the amendments. I don't know, I guess, to move the amendments.
Let me get through the rest of the hands.
Okay.
Delegate Kaiser. Legacy hand, Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to make sure we're all clear about the must also have been a resident of the state, because in the Veterans Caucus today, Mr. Secretary was there of the Veterans Affairs, and he talked about this bill. And we were told that for folks who were residents of Maryland that may be out of state, if they want to come back home and be buried, then they have that option. So I wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Yeah, that law hasn't changed. It just said at some point you have to have been a resident of the state of Maryland.
Okay.
There's no change to that.
All right. Thank you.
Delegate Austin.
Yes, I was just wondering, because this is referencing federal law and federal law is subject to change from time to time, do we want to put something in here that would cover us if they change the requirements? So for example, they were to later add Space Force reservists, we would go ahead and update it by operational law so we don't have to come back with amendments. So with the amendment that you have saying that adding a or whatever is covered under the 38 CFR as it may be amended from time to time without excluding the people that we've delineated.
Lindsay, can we do that?
Yes, I can absolutely do it. And I actually had put my hand up also because unfortunately, I wish someone from the department was here. In looking at this, I just now noticed the reference, if you're looking at page 2, line 27, in existing law, it says, and with the change, when the member entered the armed forces. And so I just noticed the phrasing of armed forces there, and I think that might not cover the Commission Corps of the U.S. Public Health Service or NOAA because they're uniformed services. So I think that might need to be changed in line with the other changes that they're trying to make in this bill.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And do you think that is that sufficient reason that we can't move ahead with this today?
But
Do I think that? No, not necessarily. I think that I wish that they were here to weigh in on that because otherwise I'm just unilaterally suggesting the change. But I think that it makes sense to say enter the armed forces or uniformed services, something to that effect.
Okay, let me come back to that after I hear from Delegate Alston. You clear?
yes, I was reading her section at the same time.
Okay, can I move on?
Yeah,
Delegate Hill?
Yeah, so I will go ahead now for an additional amendment to change armed to uniformed surfaces, which we could just do. And to Delegate Austin's point, if we're going to link it to the federal, I would want to make sure, Lindsay, that any language would not serve to take away. So if to take away anything that we're giving, right? So if they decide to narrow their definition on the federal level, I would still want our law to cover the broader group.
I can leave reserve component as it's delineated here and then just add at the end and or any other group identified under the appropriate reference to federal law as it may be amended from time to time.
Perfect. Plus additional, right? Okay.
Do we have that in form of an amendment? Delegate Hill, did you want to offer something?
I mean, I think I was just suggesting modifications to the amendments that Lindsay has offered. One, changing the armed forces to the uniformed services.
Okay,
And two, as she adds that language to reference the federal law as it may expand, I think the language that she suggested makes it clear that we can only add based on the federal law. We can't subtract based on changes in the federal law.
and that's exactly what I said.
okay, thanks. Good.
And
Lindsay?
just to clarify, I'm not going to take out armed forces. I'm going to add or uniformed services after armed forces, just in case there's some important component of leaving armed forces in there that they need.
Sounds good. All right, on the amendment, do I have a motion?
Move favorable on the amendment.
Second,
And a second. I have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed to the amendment? Amendment is adopted on the bill as amended.
Move the bill
As amended.
as amended.
second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. HB 181, which is another departmental bill. Lindsay?
This departmental bill replaces the governor with the adjutant general as the individual responsible for specified functions within the military department. Specifically, the bill authorizes the adjutant general of the military department instead of the governor to appoint a chief of staff and aides, and further establishes that these individuals serve at the pleasure of the adjutant general rather than the governor. There are no amendments. No fiscal.
The bill.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the bill and a second. All in favor of moving favorably on the bill, say aye.
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 In opposition to this bill. This bill moves on to the full committee with the unanimous recommendation of the subcommittee. HB 196, another departmental bill from the Department of Veterans and Military Families. Lindsay.
This one repeals the War Memorial Commission and instead requires the Department of Veterans and Military Families to provide oversight of the War Memorial Building. The bill alters the membership of the Board of Trustees of the Maryland Veterans Trust and the Maryland Veterans Commission and specifies the majority of the voting members of the trust and commission are a quorum. There are no amendments, no fiscal note.
Move the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. Any further discussion on this bill? All in favor of moving this bill to the full committee with a favorable report of the subcommittee, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Delegate Johnson?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I was a little late getting my hand up, but there was a question when this was heard about would the oversight organization need any additional funds to do the job?
It says they don't. It
Okay.
indicates no fiscal impact.
All right, I just wanted to double check that. Thank you.
Okay, good. And I think we had a unanimous vote, so we will move this bill onto the full committee as well. Final bill for the day, HB 276. This is a departmental bill from the Department of General Services. Lindsay.
This repeals the requirement that by July 31st of each year, each department or independent unit of state government must submit to the Records Management Division of DGS an annual report on its management of its forms during the previous fiscal year. There is an amendment for this one to change the effective date of the bill from October 1st to July 1st so that the bill goes into effect before that July 31st reporting deadline. Otherwise, there was opposition with no testimony from Maryland Right to Life.
Any discussion on this bill? Any motion on this bill?
I have a quick question, Lindsay, remind us this, bill, they're all submitting their forms.
Yeah, so
to
they're all
DGS?
submitting their forms to DGS. And there used to be a requirement that they do an aggregated report that gets sent to the General Assembly. That requirement was repealed, but they're still getting the individual reports. So this was to bring that in line with the thought that this reporting is not necessary anymore.
Okay, and somebody's looking at the forms. It's not like we're just, abandoning this. Somebody's over this. It's just taking away a report.
Well, ideally, it's done more internally at the unit level. Right?
Okay,
The head of the unit is hopefully looking at the reporting if they're getting complaints about forms or something like that and taking care of it more internally.
okay, and the public has access to all that through the department. So this is probably going to save some money for the departments, is what you're saying.
That's what the testimony said.
Okay, thank you. Move the bill.
Thank you. Delegate Hill.
Yeah, so sort of the same thing. I understood that this is being done at the departmental level, but what I wasn't clear as if we pass this bill, is there a purpose in the RMD at all? Because the RMD is not getting report. I'm not clear on what they do and what their duties are once the report goes away. So can anyone, Lindsay, do you know what the RMD actually does at that point? And do we just need to, why they're not being eliminated altogether?
The description from the fiscal note says they're responsible for inspecting the records of the units of state government, studying the records management practices of units in state government, reviewing a proposal to buy or rent equipment, storage space, or services for records, and making recommendations about the proposal to the Department of Budget and Management or the Board of Public Works. Reporting for each specified 5-year period, a series analysis of the character and quantity of records that a unit of state government holds, and that an official of the state government or the head of a unit is required or permitted to offer to the state archives, and otherwise furthering the records management programs of each unit of state government. So they're still looking at records management generally. It's just this forms piece that is coming out.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
We do have an amendment we have to deal with first. Motion on the amendment.
Move the amendment.
Second,
Made motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of the adoption of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to approving the amendment? The amendment is adopted on the
Move
bill.
the bill as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Any opposition to the bill as amended? Okay, unanimous. The bill moves forward to the full committee. The favorable report of the subcommittee, and that ends our work for this meeting of the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee. And I will see everyone in the full committee in just a little while.